Hey there. Welcome to another episode of Tinnitist TV. Today I am talking to Ron Hawkins of The Lowest of the Low. You know, people say that Rush and the Tragically Hip are quintessential Canadian bands, and they are. But for my money, The Lowest of the Low might be the ultimate Canadian band. These Toronto indie rockers have been around off and on since 1991, and in that time they've put out a slate of acclaimed albums. Most notably, their landmark debut Shakespeare My Butt, which remains one of the best-selling indie albums in the country's history and is widely regarded as one of the greatest Canadian albums ever. Despite these achievements, though, The Lowest of the Low still fly way under most folks' radar. They're all but unknown in the rest of the world. Their fans probably wouldn't even recognize them on the street. And I suspect most Canadians couldn't name anyone in the band except for Hawkins, and that's only because they confuse him with rock and roll legend Ronnie Hawkins. On top of that, the Low have never even been nominated for a Juno Award. Simply put, The Lowest of the Low somehow managed to be both a national treasure and totally anonymous at the same time. And what could be more Canadian than that? Well, how about this? They just released their new double live album Taverns And Palaces, which contains two career-spanning shows recorded in 2019 at Toronto's Horseshoe Tavern and Lee's Palace, aka their hometown stomping grounds. As they prepare to celebrate this album by playing release shows at, where else, the same venues, Hawkins, who, in typical Canadian fashion, is also one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet, got on the Zoom to talk about live albums, his low profile, his side hustle as a visual artist, whether he's met his namesake, and plenty more. We had a great chat. Hope you like it. So it's been actually about 20 years since I talked to you.
Oh my God. We do everything in decades now, apparently, right?
Well, yeah, we've both been around a while.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first couple of times I said to somebody, oh yeah, this December, it's the 30th anniversary of Shakespeare My Butt. I say it and it's kind of like I'm lying because it's an impossible number, right? It's like, it seems like it can't be 30 years, can it?
Well, and then it's, 30 years since then, but then you guys have only been together for like 20 of those 30 years. So
yeah, maybe not even 20. I doubt even 20 of those years.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of ups and downs. Yeah.
So what do you celebrate,
Well, I celebrate that you're all still alive, that we're all still playing, which is pretty awesome. 30 years later, that anybody still gives a shit, that we celebrate that.
And you can celebrate a new live album, obviously.
Yes, a double live album at that.
That's mandatory, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I'm the guy in the band who's always like, everything should be a double album, if not a triple album. I'm always like, it could be a double album. So you'll find a lot of our records, like Shakespeare My Butt was 17 songs, but I mean, an awful lot of our other records have 14 or something like that. Like they're pushing up on the, they stopped Ron from making a double album, but he really wanted to make a double album kind of vibe.
And this is just because you are that prolific. Is that the thing? Just
well,
can't.
We have a lot of songs, and for whatever reason, through the years, I still feel. I was talking to somebody the other day about this, like still feeling, in a lot of ways, like I'm still 17 years old. Like I still have that kind of excitement about doing it.
Wow.
And so that tends to generate, and as I say, I'm teasing my little studio here at 8x8 in the back behind the furnace. But I mean, once I got this and I could really sort of, in the old days, I used to write songs on the bed with an acoustic guitar kind of thing, right? And now there's so much you can do with software and everything like that. Like I'm basically have, hundreds of drum loops I've snatched out of people's songs that I like and everything. And I tend to throw something up and jam with it basically. So depending on what the vibe of and the groove of the drum loop is, I might write something that I never was written sitting on my, sitting with an acoustic guitar.
Do you write every day?
I don't write every day. And in fact, over COVID, because I'm also a visual artist, I kind of, because I'd been doing music sort of nonstop for the last few years, I kind of switched gears and was painting every day. And so over COVID, I went back and sort of tweaked a few things, and I was finishing it up in EP. I started before the pandemic, but I really didn't sit down and hunker down and write a lot of songs or anything, because if anything, we're kind of bottlenecked right now with a whole bunch of stuff that has to come out. I've got a solo, we've got the double live record, then I've got a solo EP, then we've got at least a single record of new Lowest of the Low studio stuff that we haven't even gotten to yet. So So we're sort of covered into like 2023 or at least late 2022 already. So
Okay, can you turn it off though? I mean, don't the ideas still come, and do you have to go, okay, never mind, or do you have to then go, oh shit, I better write this down and save it for 20
yeah.
years from now?
Well, not the magical Paul McCartney moments where you wake up with an entire song in your head. Like that has happened to me maybe twice in my whole career. And, every now and then I'll wake in a fever dream out of like in bed, and reach for something and to write something down. But that's not that often. Like usually the way it happens for me is I come down here and I start screwing around basically with a guitar and I start singing gibberish. And it is literally gibberish. Like I sing not even words, like not even sounds. And then every now and then something will pop, like a word might pop out or a phrase might pop out that I go, I wonder why I said that. And then I kind of reverse engineer from that. Or sometimes I'll come up with a guitar lick that I really like, and it might suggest, like if it's a super angry sounding lick or something like that, I might suggest, well, what am I angry about right now? And I tend to let it lead me a little bit. But yeah, I think the taps are there, and I sort of, if I don't look at them, if I go about my life and do other things, then they just stay closed. But the minute I sort of open them up and say, okay, well, let's see what's in there, stuff still keeps flying out. So that's a weird.
Have you seen Get Back?
I have, yes. Been talking a lot about it lately.
Well, yeah, you and everybody else. But, what you're talking about kind of reminds me of that overhead shot of Paul McCartney sitting there strumming the bass and writing Get Back, just kind of, very, I don't want to say workmanlike, but, again, just sort of like, okay, I've got this thing and just kind of playing with it and waiting and singing gibberish. And then a song or a word pops out or a phrase pops out, and he's just kind of, you watch it evolve in real time. Did that strike you as something? Oh yeah, I've done that. Obviously you haven't written Get Back, but
I think I said to myself, that's how geniuses like me and Paul McCartney work.
There you go. Glad you put yourself first too.
Yeah, waiting around for waiting around for John Lennon to show up. It's like, like I think a lot of stuff like that. The thing that happens with those guys too is they're often in the studio. And I've shared this with other people like Steven, who used to write in Lowest of the Low when he was in the band, and other writers friends of mine, is there something magical about being in the studio? Because you go in there to make a record, but anytime I'm in there, it's like every time I pick something up and just fart around in between, something kind of magical starts happening. Because it's like, I don't know if it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy or some kind of psychosomatic thing that you do to yourself, but it feels special to be in there. It feels like a hallowed place. And then maybe that just tweaks your romance or something, and you create. But I mean, like, yeah, watching Paul do that. And then, the other episode where, or maybe it's the same episode, where the producer is talking about the show and John's going on about, plastic cubes, and we could have plastic cubes over here. And in the background, you just hear Paul, like he's pulling out the chords for Let It Be or something and starting that song. And it just seems like, well, Paul will just write a whole bunch of classic songs while everybody else is making tea and, talking about plastic cubes.
Yeah, and not realizing what they're hearing. I love the fact that when he's doing some of this stuff, they're just sitting there looking at him, because obviously we in hindsight can go, he's writing Get Back, for Christ's sake, but to them it's just another Tuesday with Paul, right?
Yeah, and the other fact that some people had mentioned was that it's kind of wonderful to see that the look on their faces collectively. They're not in there going, we're in here making another classic Beatle record. They're like, it's Tuesday, we're in here doing what we do. We're in here making a record, and we'll see what it is. And I also loved, like, I was saying to somebody, like, the first half hour of the first episode I found so refreshing, because I was going, wow, like Ringo hasn't found the pocket and the Beatles sound like shit. It's really nice to know that even the Beatles can sound like shit until they don't. It's like they sort of chip away at it and sculpt away at it and get there, like they always get there. And maybe they get there faster than most of us would, but it was nice to see that sort of sloppy, like they don't really know what they're doing, and that sounds kind of crappy, and this will get there, because we know where it winds up, like it's pretty fascinating.
So talking about this live album, what was sort of the order of events? I mean, was this a thing where you went, what, we should, it's about time, we should record the band, we're sounding good? Or was it a case of you were just recording shows and listened back to them and went, oh, this is good, we should put this out?
I think the way it goes these days, because our front of house guy, Simon, I think he's got a Pro Tools rig that's hooked up to the board every time we play. So I think he records every show just for his own edification or just to have something that he mucks around with at home. And so, yeah, I don't ever remember us sitting down going, we should make a live record. But I think after the fact, I think it was a combination of we hadn't made a live record for 20 years that was officially sanctioned by us. There had been fan ones and stuff, but our last one was called Nothing Short of a Bullet from 2001, I think. And so it's been a very long time. And for me, once we played these bunch of shows, we were on tour with the band, the Sky Wallace Band. And the way we have always worked is that we handpick the openers that play with us. And every now and then, I mean, we enjoy everybody and that's why we pick them. But every now and then there's a band that kind of magically becomes sort of family with us. And then the bands kind of meld a little bit. And you find out that, two people from this band are hanging out with two people from the other band when they go for dinner and stuff like that. Like it just starts to happen. And we then played some songs together live and stuff like that. And we just really loved their band. And because Sky came up and sang with us and the whole band came up and did some songs with us, we sort of thought, hey, maybe we should capture this moment in time. And also, this will be the first time that sort of this version of Lowest of the Low, we've got Greg Smith on bass and Michael McKenzie playing guitar. I really wanted to capture this because I think this is a very true to the spirit of Lowest of the Low kind of band we have right now live. And so all those things kind of wound up just being like, hey, it might be a good time to do that. And then I heard the tracks because there were 50 tracks to choose from because we generally mix our set list up each night. So I was going to mix it. So I had all the chance to go through all 50 songs and people were like, well, how do you pick the songs for the 22 songs? And I'm like, well, first you go through and go, oh, that's not happening. Oh, we're not mixing that one. Like find all the flubbers and get rid of those. And then you mix the ones, then you choose we wanted to choose a real sort of walk through the catalog kind of thing. So there's representations from every record and that's how it wound up. So then it was like 11 songs per disc, 11 songs for Lee's Palace, 11 songs for the Horseshoe.
Right. I mean, how many times have you played those rooms?
I would love to know. I mean, for instance, I think it's the 74th anniversary this year that we're playing in the Horseshoe. And I said, I think I feel like we did the 50th and the 60th and the 70th, so
the 15th and
yeah, it's been a lot of times.
Yeah. I mean, it must feel like, well, on the one hand, it's got to be really comfortable, but you can also get complacent, right?
Yeah, that's one thing that I love. Like, I'm very proud to be a Lowest of the Low member because I think we've always just been a band that has some tenacity and it's really, really ingrained in our souls that we never ever want to phone it in. Like we have a great respect for our crowd and our audience who have been with us since the day, and I get letters, like I get notes from people on Facebook and emails and stuff like that every week from people who, somebody's in Miami or somebody's in Vancouver and they're telling me about the show they saw, spoke in 1992 in London or somebody's dad was dying and this is the song that got them through that tough part or whatever. And it's like, these are the kinds of things that when I was 15 or 16, I would only have dreamed that I would write anything that would mean that much to somebody. So by the time we're here, we're very aware that we are blessed and that we owe it to that fan base to be there when we show up. If we book a date, then we're at that date, and we're going to do our best. And I've always said to Lawrence, like the minute it doesn't feel like we're doing that will be the minute we stop. Like, I don't ever want to be that band going out, oh, we made a record so that we could go tour. And yeah, we're just touring because we need to pay our mortgages. And like, that's horrible.
Do you think you could have recorded this album if you had done it intentionally? I mean, would it impact the performance if you went up there going, okay, we're recording a live album tonight, so, everything's got to be just right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think for me, I don't think in those ways, but I can't speak for everybody in the band if there might have been more pressure, if they felt a spotlight on them. Like, this is going down in history, boys. This is going down. Right. This is the document, so don't screw up, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Don't think about a polar bear. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it was good that it happened this way, and we got to catch a bunch of stuff. As I said, like the Sky Wallace band joining us on a couple of covers that we did, which were fun. And we have a horn section that plays with us at only the big shows, and we call them the Legitimizers. And I named them that just because I said, it doesn't matter how we screw up. If they're playing behind us, we seem legitimate,
You're a real band now.
Yeah, we're a real band. We got a horn section. and they nailed it. Like they just tore the roof off with their stuff. And so they were on it. And then it was very nice to go through. Greg, our bass player, had the idea for the album cover art, and it was like a bunch of, it's a bunch of snapshots of both the venues. And because COVID was happening, we were saying, hey, maybe there shouldn't be no band photo and no people in it whatsoever, just empty bars. And then Greg also works at the Horseshoe as a barback once in a while, and he said, I can get us into the really crappy parts of these two venues that nobody gets to see. Because, naming it Taverns and Palaces, we did it a little bit tongue in cheek and a little bit sort of like, these are still sort of sweaty rock and roll bars. Right. So we thought it was funny to call it Taverns and Palaces, and you get to see, where the drywall's crumbling.
Much like, yes.
Yes, exactly.
Talking about the cover tunes. I mean, I find it interesting that you do that Portugal the Man song. Where did that idea come from?
Yeah, that was very organic. It was sort of just, I heard it, I don't know which summer it was that I heard it just constantly. And my daughter, Greg's son used to talk about, I'm a rebel with a kickstand, he thought it was. So we were joking about that, but just hearing it all the time, and my attitude about kind of pop radio is the same now as it's always been. Is that it would have been Wham when I was it would have been Wham when Lois Low first came out, and now there's lots of bands that I can't stand, that whatever that Kicking Like Jackie Chan tune that came out, or some Post Malone stuff or whatever that I'm not a big fan of. And then I heard this song and it kind of grabbed me, and I was like, I dig this song, and I sort of thought I was liking it in spite of myself, because I made a bunch of assumptions about it being a sort of a vacuous pop song. And then I saw a video for it, and there was a lot of activism in the video, and I thought, oh, there's way more under the hood of this song than I thought there was. And so I had to sort of catch myself. But then we thought there's great parts for the legitimizers to play. We can invite Sky up and she can we can trade off the vocals. And there was a funny moment, like if you want to compare old school songwriting, or like maybe the Beatles doing it, and somebody like Portugal the Man, it's like, they're just such a modern pop band that when you, in the credits, it'll say, we did Walls Come Tumbling Down as well. It says Walls Come Tumbling Down, written by Paul Weller. Feel It Still by there's 25 people, It's like a crew. It's like a giant crew of people.
Yeah, everybody gets a credit for the drum sample or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
What's your relationship like with your own older songs? I mean, do they still hold up for you? Do you still feel the same way about them, or are there things in there where you go, if I was writing this now, I wouldn't say that, or I would say this, or?
That's an interesting to ask, because now that you ask me that seems to be something that I obviously should have thought of thinking, but I have never really thought of. I've never really thought of, like, would I change anything? They just sort of are what they are. And I think
do you ever listen to them, or do you just play them?
I mean, we play them so often that I would never want to sit down and listen to them. And, and I always historically had a problem sitting down listening to Shakespeare My Butt, because we made it to be demos originally. It was never meant to be released in that form. And there's something, because it was made in 1991, there are some choices that our friend Andy made reverb wise, and there's a sort of a squishiness to it that I feel isn't the way I would mix it, or I don't think is the way he would have mixed it now. It's a little wetter than I like. And so there's certain things I listen to at night and I can't not hear that stuff. And for instance, like, funny that you should ask, because like 3 days ago, we had an opportunity to take the 2-inch master tapes, and we went into a place called Revolution Recording, and we listened for the first time in 30 years to the actual 2-inch master. So we had 24 tracks, because it was a 24 track machine, displayed out in front of us, and we could just pull up the guitars and the vocals and, hey, what's here and what's there. And there was a couple of extra things that we hadn't mixed in, which were interesting, and interesting to decide why we made that choice to take them out, because a couple of them were pretty cool. But what I noticed right off the bat was, because they're just raw tracks coming back through the board, there's no effects put on them or anything. It's just literally the raw sounds. I was like, wow, it sounds tougher, and it sounds way punchier. And it's sort of like, this is the example. This almost with faders up. This is almost how I would have liked it to sound. So that's a thing, So I think for a long time there was that. I had a hard time listening to that side of it. And then of course we were so close to it that every subsequent record that we made was compared to that record, and we almost developed a bit of a a grudge against it, because it was sort of like this albatross, this beautiful albatross that was the reason that we had an audience, but at the same time it was I felt like like nowadays I always say, like, we released a record called Agipop a couple of years ago, which I think, in my opinion, is the best Lowest of the Low record, song wise and sound wise and band wise, that we've made. Yet it doesn't stand a chance going up against Shakespeare My Butt, because I'm saying, like, I can write the songs for you, but I can't make you 18 again, so and you were 18 or 19, you were free as a bird, you didn't have any responsibilities, you were going out every night, maybe you're in university or you weren't, but you were going to drunken bars and stumbling home, and all of that becomes part of the song, like all that becomes part of the album. And there's no way to replicate that for somebody now that they have kids or they have jobs and they have mortgages. And so I feel like there's almost an unfair, it's like you've put them in a cage match and you tied Agipop's hand behind its back. And so that's another thing. I think we had a bit of a grudge against that record for a long time, because we realized it would be hard to climb up out of it.
So were you listening to it again because you're going to reissue it, or what?
No, we listened to it again because Stephen, I'm doing air quotes right now, Stephen found the 2-inch master tapes in his basement, and there's 5 of them, and they're fairly large. And I said, Steve, I've been to your house. Like, I mean, you found them? Like, you don't live in a palatial mansion. Like, where did you find them? But apparently they're in a big blue tub somewhere, and he hadn't looked at it for years. And he was like, oh, hey, here are the 2-inch masters to Shakespeare My Butt. So we thought, hey, let's go into the studio and just, what a treat, And Steve hasn't been in the band since 2013, so it was nice to sort of sit with him and just have laugh about the old days and tell some stories. And we're actually being shot for a documentary as well, so that was a nice piece that could be involved in the doc.
Oh, okay.
So behind the music.
Wow. Okay, so this is going to be like a whole historical.
Yeah, like a feature-length doc.
Cool. Who's doing it?
Simon Head, who, as I said, was our front of house guy. He's he's shooting it and editing it, and I have no idea when it's going to be released, but certainly we'll let everybody know.
How do you feel about that?
I feel good. I mean, it's almost like you're asking me about Shakespeare. It's almost the same thing, which is that Shakespeare, as I say, we've sort of had a grudge for maybe a decade or something, but once something you get far enough away from it, I've sort of settled into the idea that it's kind of a classic record of ours, and I should respect that people want to hear those songs, and I should respect the songs themselves. And I can now sort of listen to them almost like a fan and go, "Oh, that's a good song," like, I wonder what that young man was going on about, And I feel the same way with something like this, like the idea of a documentary of our whole path is, I'm now in a place where that doesn't make me embarrassed, or it doesn't make me feel like, really, are we dead? Are we dead yet?
Do you guys have a lot of like old footage and stuff? Do you have like a treasure trove of stuff to use?
Yeah, Dave, our drummer, does, because if it had been up to me, like, I was such a maniac when we toured that I really didn't. I think it was maybe the 3rd tour that we were on that I went, wow, Canada's pretty beautiful. I looked up on the 3rd tour to notice the Rocky Mountains. But Dave, the whole time we were on tour in the early days, Dave was like leaning out the window in the prairies with a camera. And we'd all be going, what the hell are you taking a picture of, Dave? Like, but he also went to OCAD. He's a visual artist. So he came back with all this stuff, and he kept he did a journal where he would draw pictures, and, so there's lots of that. And I think Simon's going to fan source a lot of stuff as well at our shows, or QR code where they can just send whatever they have. And cool. It'll be a cavalcade of haircuts. I know that, because last time we were ever documented in the film, there were an awful lot of haircuts.
Hey, at least you still have hair. Be happy.
True, I know, I am. I'm quite happy with that.
So what does the band mean to you these days? I mean, because back when you were young, it's, you're in a band, and it's us against the world, and then, you break up, you get back together, you get break up, you get back together. Now you've got, at any given time, 2 or 3 bands maybe on the go, and your own stuff.
Yeah.
What's the relationship like these days?
It's really good. It's like, I think, it's interesting that we have Get Back to reference things from right now, because everybody I know who's in a band, or has ever been in a band, or has been with somebody who was in a band, recognizes all of the scenarios, like from the chipping it out of out of clay where it doesn't sound very good, to eventually getting it to that finished place, to the to the endless hours of farting around. I could not believe how much those guys were dicking around in there.
Yeah.
And there's always one guy like Paul who wants to, okay, all right now, lads, like we need a schedule of work, and then you always have.
Which are you? Are you Paul or are you John?
Oh, I'm definitely way more in the John camp.
Okay.
I should be in the Paul camp, given that I write all the songs, but oftentimes, like Lawrence will musically direct the band, because he seems to want to get the job done, which is thank God, because we do a lot of farting around. And I mean, one thing that happens a lot is that if there's ever a second of downtime, somebody starts skanking some kind of ska thing or some kind of reggae thing, and we go into a 7-minute dub, jam, and so it's fun, but it's not conducive to getting the songs we wrote down.
No, but after 30 years,
but I feel
it must just be nice that, again, that like we started off sort of saying that, just nice to still be here, nice to still, have this outlet, nice to, because again, there's so many bands that don't last 30 months, never mind the better part of 30 years.
Yeah, for sure. And on top of all that stuff, I really appreciate and feel blessed that Lowest of the Low has always been and still is, and if anything has maybe become more so, a band that honors the way I started in music, which is that I thought I could either be a musician when I grew up and started liking the Beatles and and Elvis Costello and the Specials and all this kind of stuff, but then I was also deeply involved in politics, first off through sort of like anti-nukes kind of peace groups and stuff like that, and then farther left, and then more socialist groups and everything. And I really sort of honed my political chops. But I always, when I was very young, at 15, 16, I always thought they were separate things. And then with people like the Clash and the Sex Pistols and stuff like that, I realized, oh, maybe I can find a way to just make these one thing, and then I can do them both, and I can have fun doing them both all the time, and I can hopefully have some kind of effect on the world that I live in. And I feel like, the Low has always honored that. I mean, every band I'm in is sort of forced to honor that, in the fact that, in the basis that I write the song, so I kind of bake it in to some degree. But like a band like I had, like the Rusty Nails, it was much more about swagger and about fun and about creating a certain style of music than it was. The Low has always been the real flag bearer of that kind of socialist politics and activism, and the music, and the sort of punk inspired folk aspect of it. So I'm really proud of our band, and I really think that we've always swum upstream a little bit, and we've always sort of fought with the industry in our way, and a lot of that comes out in the documentary. Most people who love us, who are in the industry, are going like, the boys left a lot of money on the table, and they, or they could have gone a lot farther than they got had they not been so adamant about the way they wanted to do things. But now that I'm my age, it's like my daughter at a very young age said, Dad, if you had taken all that money, you'd have spent it by now, and you'd have felt bad about the decisions you made. And now, the money would be gone anyway by now. And, now you at least have, you can be proud of sticking to your guns. And
yes, well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, but you're also kind of, it's very quintessentially Canadian. You are beloved, but, realistically, I don't think most people could name every member of the band. And I think you guys can still walk down the street and, have regular lives and have regular existences, So there's something to be said for that.
Very regular existences.
Too regular.
Yeah, too regular. Maybe more regular than we would like. We do look over our shoulders every now and then, see if anybody's noticing us. But yeah, no, I know what you're saying, but it comes down to like my friend Art Bergman. I feel like he's in a bit in the same boat. Like he's a foundational part of the punk rock movement in Canada, and he just won the Order of Canada. I mean, that's huge. But if you were to say, hey, how many of you guys have an Art Bergman record or know who Art Bergman is, there would be crickets in a lot of parts of the country.
Sure. And
that's sort of I see Iggy Pop over your shoulder. Like I feel like Art is kind of like the Iggy Pop of Canada. And maybe if Art grew up in the United States, he would have been a world known, Lou Reed, Iggy Pop, he would have been, not a household name, but he would be certainly much more famous than he is now.
So speaking of that, shouldn't you have the Order of Canada?
Of course I should.
Well, yeah, exactly.
I don't
No
know. I don't know.
disrespect,
I don't know
Ron,
why
but
they give that out, because I
I
said to
know.
Art when he got it, I was like, wow, that's a crown. I said an odd crown that I know you will wear gracefully, but it's like I was pretty shocked.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
wow,
no
that's amazing.
disrespect to him. I would have thought, honestly, Joey Shithead should
Yeah,
be #1 on that list, you know?
but I think Art, it's telling that what Art did immediately when he was awarded it is he went to a bunch of First Nations organizations that he works with and said, "How do you feel about this? Should I accept this?"
Hmm.
Because it's the Order of Canada,
Hmm.
and I thought, that's so Art, and they were like, "No, go for it. I mean, you've earned whatever this accolade is, and whatever it
Mhm.
really means. You've earned the respect of these people." And so then Art turned around and used even getting the Order of Canada to shine a light on these issues with Indigenous people in Canada. And I thought, well, that's the perfect way to do it. Like that's exactly what Art would do. He would take
Right.
a so-called honor, and then he would, not shit on it, but he would shine it in a different light,
Yeah.
a place where the light should be shining. And so yeah, I mean it's I guess it would be again like Beatles with their MBEs or whatever. Some of them gave them back, some of them didn't,
Yep.
depending on how they felt.
So talking about your own visual art, you said
Mhm.
you've been doing a lot lately. That's been kind of your primary focus.
Yeah, but it's been nonstop during COVID, and Jill and I, my partner Jill here, we at some point early on in COVID, I was saying, I feel almost like I have survivor's guilt because all the musicians I know, like our incomes slammed to a halt, and luckily we live in Canada, so there was CERB. But I started painting, and then I started selling paintings just regularly, like almost like I would paint it, put it up, and it would sell. And
What?
so it was almost like without a blink, my visual art income replaced my music income. And also, so that on the economic front, that was great, but also on the sort of spirit front, I would wake up in the morning and I had lots to do, like lots to think about, lots to do, which kept my mind busy. And I just felt like, not everybody has that. And I saw a lot of people suffering, and a lot of people close to me, like some people had to up their meds through it, and some people got on meds during it, and there was anxiety. And so I was having a little bit of a guilty sort of survivor's guilt about it, sort of like it seemed a little too easy if I didn't think about the world outside.
Right.
My little home front was pretty covered, but it was that.
Well,
And then I was boxing, I do a boxing workout, which was, I thought, I need to keep physically active and I need to keep mentally active if I'm gonna not go crazy during this.
so is the creative process for you kind of the same, whether it's visual or musical? Is it the same sort of thing of going down and just starting and it takes over and kind of evolves on its own?
Yeah, I would say so. The difference would be, I used to paint exclusively portraits, and that was before COVID. And in those days, I found it a lot more similar because I thought, oh, I know the through line is that I'm fascinated by people and what makes them tick, and I'm kind of documenting people, either their stories and songs or their actual faces in portraits.
Hmm.
And then when COVID hit, it just seemed to hit at the same time that I had been reading a lot more about abstract expressionism, and specifically a book called Ninth Street Women, which was about the women in the 50s, 40s, 50s, and 60s that were kind of, they were famous, but they were nowhere near as famous as Jackson Pollock and the men around them, because they were women, and it was a very misogynist time in the art industry. But I was looking at their work, and I got this sort of little light went off for me about abstraction. So the difference between the abstract work that I've been doing and writing songs is that once I do that first anarchic messing about with music, once I'm into the music thing, then my head kind of takes over, and there's a lot more thinking involved,
Mm-hmm.
like to making the words work and all that kind of stuff. I find that it starts to come from my heart, kind of, but much more up into my head.
Right.
Once there's a form. Whereas in the abstract painting world, it pretty much stays down in here in my body somehow. Like it's a lot less thinking involved, and it's a lot more sort of reacting reflexively to things that happen. And then that thing that happens makes me do something else. And then sometimes I go, oh, well, that was a huge mistake, and I just can paint over it, and just keep moving the pieces around until I like what it looks like and what the balance is and stuff. So
They're
yeah, it's less
interesting because
thinking.
they're very graphic based, it seems. Some of
Yeah.
the ones I've seen. Yeah. Do they take a long time? How long does it take you to do a piece?
it's hard to say. Like some of them, like I do have like there's some that are very, very graphic in terms of like they are geometric. I have a series called Conversations with Mayakovsky, which is Vladimir Mayakovsky was a constructivist in the early Russian, like in the early 1900s, and he was very, very about geographic circles and spheres and stuff. So I started doing these paintings as a conversation with him because I always loved his work and sort of like, what can I do with geometry? And they started by, when we were shut down, we were having game night, me and my partner and my daughter Ruby, and we were playing like Cranium or something. But it was one of these games where it's like, I have my role and then it goes around and it takes a while to come back to you. So while I was present all the time, but I had these little things and I was just doodling these little graphics. And those are the ones that became the kind of conversations with Mayakovsky. I was just playing with geometric shapes. But then there's another series called Beer Graffiti Walls and a series called Go Rouse the Ghost, which are much more, there are figurative aspects in those sometimes. Or the Beer Graffiti Walls one was, I tend to write down things that I see as graffiti in washrooms. And like I've way back to Sneaky D's, there's a song on the second Low record, which is pretty much made up of graffiti I saw at Sneaky D's. So I sometimes didn't have a notebook where I'm just writing down stuff. And like one that came across was fuck power, choose hope. And I thought that was a cool idea. So I would use that to jump off and make something. So some of them are more like street art, and I spray paint some of them and stuff.
And you just sell the originals? Are you doing prints and posters and everything too?
I haven't done prints so far, and this will sound like a very elitist. I know. It's yet it fits into my the way I do business, which is badly. It'll sound a bit elitist, but I have had the opportunity to see lots of art, like stand in front of lots of art in museums all over the world, wherever I've been traveling and stuff like that. And there's some kind of mojo, some kind of vibration, some kind of mojo that happens when you're right in front of the piece. I would liken it to like seeing a band live or something that is impossible to reproduce. And I always feel like I want people to be standing in front of them. I know that's not reasonable because everybody can't be traipsing through each other's houses or, and can't afford to go all over the world looking at museums. Not that mine are in museums all over the world, but just there's something I want to honor about the actual iteration, the first iteration of it. So far I haven't. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. Like I may get to a point. A lot of people have asked me if I would make prints. So, and the G-Clay stuff, like nowadays, the G-Clay prints and stuff like that they can get them very close.
If you gave up music, would just doing the visual art be a pay increase?
More and more. I have to say, it's funny that you say that because more and more, not only was I surprised when I just switched incomes from music to painting, but I realized how much easier it is for me. I mean, not assuming that kind of selling jaunt that I was on would continue ad nauseum forever. But if it did, if it became a continuous thing, it's so much easier to walk into my little studio and do that and then sell a piece to a person and it's done and there's the money and it's a very real transaction, as opposed to music these days, which is like, can you even make money selling records anymore? Like with streaming, nobody really buys records. And if they do, they're doing it out of some kind of support / pity, for
exactly.
the beautiful way to look at it is that they know you have to eat, so they're trying to support you. But really, this is just way too convenient, like to have all the music in the world, including your own, in the car, in your pocket, wherever, right? So it's just, that's where we're going. And there's no way to make money selling music anymore. It's about selling t-shirts and it's about getting out and playing live. And then when live takes a hit too, you start thinking, wait, is this just an amazingly fulfilling hobby that I have? So I don't know. It's true. Like you're saying, it could be that. I mean, certainly when my grandmother said you need something to fall back on, she wasn't talking about visual art, but
well, yeah, I mean, I always think of the example of Captain Beefheart, who same kind of scenario, couldn't, influential, made great music for years.
Yeah.
Again, crickets, no money, and ended up, becoming much more well compensated as a painter, So.
Yeah. I mean, another good thing for me about visual art is I realize it's something I can do. I mean, this may also sound adolescent, but I mean, because of when I grew up with music and because of the bands I liked, I couldn't be more committed to trying to say something real and trying to be real. But I also love and am affected by the kind of posing aspect of rock and roll, the kind of the band uniforms, the how do I look when I stand this way with the guitar? Like I mean, I love all that shit, right? And I will have to say that there's something, when I saw some clips of the Stones out on, I guess on this tour, it kept coming up in my Facebook feed. And I hated to say this out loud because it sounds so ageist and horrible, but I was like, it feels a little bit like might be time to just not do that anymore, Mick, because he was a strange enough dancer at any given part of his career, but it's like this guy's trying to be sexy out there on the runway with, and I know it's like, I feel like it sounds adolescent when I say it, but that's important to me, that there's a sort of a sex appeal kind of energy, kind of, I don't know, it's just all part of the punk thing, that there might be a point in my life where maybe it's more dignified to be Leonard Cohen, be a singer-songwriter, delivering songs that way. Or if you're absolutely crazy like Tom Waits, then it doesn't matter. You're timeless. Like he was crazy when he was 22. He's
crazy. So you just have to get crazier is what you're really getting down to.
Yeah, you have to become more of a character, more of an eccentric. But painting is a thing I feel like you could do quietly, and you don't have to, like the thing about, new record, well, so band photo, press photo, interview, like, video interviews. And it's like with painters, I feel like it's much more like the work can just be the thing. There doesn't have to be a band photo of the painter,
Yeah. But it's just tough to age in rock and roll. I mean, they say it keeps you young, and that's obviously very true. But at the same time, you're what, 56, 57?
Yeah, I just turned 57.
Yeah. So, I mean, at some point, everybody, I think it's only natural that you would go, well, wait a minute, I'm a 57-year-old man and I write songs for a living and I play guitar, and that's kind of out of step with everybody else,
Yeah.
I mean, have you had those moments and kind of, gone, wait a minute, what am I doing?
Not really, to be honest with you, because as I say, I still, and it may not always be this way, but I still really have access to the kind of excitement that I had when I was a teenager. I still feel exactly the same way about writing songs and getting out there and playing them and stuff. And yeah, I don't know. I certainly, and somebody's on the Humble and Fred show recently, and he said, I can't believe, he said, I just saw that live video. You're still jumping around. You look great. He said, and he was talking about 17, and I said, well, don't get me wrong. Like sometimes I feel like a 17-year-old in a 117-year-old's body. Like I still like having the repetitive strain of that guitar all the time, and I used to be a goaltender when I was young, so there's some knee stuff that happens and everything as you get older. But yeah, I don't know. I think I think my body will tell me, or my fans, maybe somebody will tell me, won't they?
Yeah,
somebody will tell me.
Body, or your kids, or your fans, or your
my kids.
or...
Yeah, my daughter's already. It's really, really hard to impress your daughter.
Well, how old is she?
She's 15.
Oh yeah, well yeah, forget it. I mean,
so I'm just gonna wait it out. I'm gonna wait it out till I can be impressive again.
Oh, well, okay, that's long enough. Talking about that, so is there another Lowest of the Low album? I mean, are you guys already recording, or are you going to start recording, or this backlog of songs?
I think we're gonna start in the new year. I think we're gonna start in January, February recording. Because as I say, I've got like a 6-song EP of my own stuff, so a solo record gonna come out.
So is that the order? Solo EP and then the album?
Yeah, and then the next solo record will come at some point. And we've got a bunch of songs, and we're sort of mining the same territory we went to with Agitpop, which was we brought back almost like we almost got back to the place we were just before Lowest of the Low started, which was a band called Popular Front. Me and Dave and Steve Stanley were in a band called Popular Front, which did a lot more sort of like world beat stuff and ska and some reggae stuff and some punk stuff. And so some of the things like what the song When She Falls and Love and Justice and things like that from Agitpop, we're kind of continuing to go down that route, like the sort of like punk soul kind of Train in Vain kind of soul. and then some ska stuff and some there's some stuff that sounds a little bit like the Stranglers, I think, sort of groovy in the bottom end, but jagged on the top end kind of thing. And so
And
it's
without
fun.
the
It's
misogyny?
exciting. What's that?
And
Yeah,
without
without the misogyny. And right now, the working title we're going on is it's Welcome to the Plunder Dome, because there's a lot of songs about how things have been going over the last few years, and we'll see where it ends up. But excited about that. But as you talk about, as we're talking about where the industry's at, and with streaming and all that kind of stuff, we actually thought, well, maybe what we'll do is release a song a month. Maybe we'll record and we'll release a song a month digitally. And then at the end of it, if we decide we want to compile it and make the document, now that vinyl's back, like, you have to drag me kicking and streaming not to make a beautiful 12-inch piece of art with the vinyl in it, because to me, that's the perfect thing,
Mm-hmm.
Like CDs, I was always a little disappointed with, and then streaming is just wherever it is. And yes, the art is on your phone like this big,
Yeah.
and it doesn't tell you who produced it, and it doesn't tell you any of the things that I grew up excited about.
Do you still have a lot of vinyl?
Yeah, I've come back into it as a renaissance, because I sold all my vinyl, and literally in 1991, just as Lowest starting as a band, I moved into this kind of, I joke about it, I moved into a squat, except I was paying rent every month, a little bit of rent every month, but it was a total trash heap of 5 punk rock dudes in a falling down place, and I had to sell all my vinyl because there was nowhere to keep it, and I was very mobile at that point in my life. So I sold it all, and then CDs, I was buying CDs, and it was like, I would joke about, I bought London Calling on vinyl, and then I had to sell all that stuff. Then I bought London Calling on CD, and then I bought London Calling as a download, and then I bought, then vinyl came back, and I bought London Calling again on vinyl. So I've been rebuying all the stuff and buying new stuff, but yeah, collection's getting pretty big. I love it, and it was sort of like a revelation when I first came back to it and first bought a record and put it down, and the first side was over, and I was sitting on the couch, and I went, oh yeah, like, you have to be here. You have to go and flip it over and maybe even dust it off. And, you have to engage with it. Like, it forces you to pay attention to it in a way that streaming shit while you're doing the dishes doesn't,
So you're all nerdy about it? Are you like really picky with your vinyl now? Are you?
Pretty nerdy. Yeah. I wouldn't say I'm not. I mean, I certainly have nerdier friends about their vinyl, but I'm not tossing it across the room like I would have back in the day. I don't like them to be
it's expensive now too.
It's expensive, yeah.
So
and it's
what,
impossible right now. It's impossible to get it made. Apparently, there's a 2-year backup on.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, if you guys want to have vinyl of the new album, you better book the plant now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah. And then the new thing is now, because everyone's doing cassettes, but apparently the little screws that go into cassettes are all sitting on shipping containers out in the middle of the ocean somewhere. So people can't do cassettes now. So there's this talk that it's going to default back to CDs only because that's what people can actually produce.
What's wrong with wax cylinders?
Yeah.
They can't go back to wax cylinders, so just keep going back and back and back.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah.
Player pianos.
Yeah.
Our music's only available in player pianos now.
There you go. There's a concept for it. So what's your favorite live album?
My favorite live album. Well, there's a great collection of live Elvis Costello live at the Alma Combo in Toronto.
Sure.
And I love that record partially because it's so frenetic. Like, it's, there's always somebody in our band, and it depends on different speeds, complaining about the speed live, like it's way faster than the album version and stuff like that. And I'm always like, yeah, of course, because it's live, right? And I was thinking those terms. And I get it, sometimes there are songs that you destroy because the groove is gone because you're playing them so fast. But I go back to this with the Attractions playing with him at the Alma Combo. It's just so ferocious. And it's ferocious. What I love about it is it's ferocious pop music. It's not like it's wrapped up to be the Sex Pistols. It's ferocious, melodic, ferocious pop music,
And were you at the gig?
I was not at the gig, but I have to laugh because there is a guy at that gig who you hear him screaming out, and it's so clearly the same guy over the whole night. You hear him on that record, and I wonder if he recognizes himself when he hears the record. And then we made our double live thing, and there's a guy who shows up here and there.
Yes,
And
I
I'm
was
like,
going to say, I think it's the same guy.
yeah, I hear him. Maybe it's the same guy.
Yeah, he really loves you, man.
Yeah, we love you.
So in your travels, you must have met your namesake at some point or another.
I never have.
No?
No, I never have. No.
Oh,
But
okay.
when I was living in Kensington Market, Jill and I got a loft apartment in Kensington Market. And for some reason, that period of time in my life, at like 3 a.m, our phone would ring every now and then. I'd pick it up, and it would always be like a drunken Irish lady looking for Ronnie Hawkins. And I'd be like, "Oh, you got the wrong one. Sorry." It's like, "All right, love." But they were always drunk, and it was always the middle of the night. So
Seems fair.
getting a lot of his calls, but I've never actually met him. No.
I'm shocked. I would have thought at some point in the 30 years you would have crossed paths.
100%. We had a Rusty Nails show in Kitchener, and we were just about, I think we finished the sound check and everything, and then all these bikers pulled up because we could see them through this sort of picture window. All these bikers pulled up, and I said to the doorman, I said, you might want to clarify who they're here to see, because I think they're here to see Ronnie Hawkins, and if they don't get the Ronnie Hawkins they want, there's probably going to be trouble. So the doorman did that, and then the bikes roared off, and yeah, it's funny. And my mom had a very funny episode, because she was in the crowd in Buffalo, a huge like a Griffiths Art Square or something. It was like I don't know, thousands of people, and my mom is standing in the middle of that crowd, and a couple of people are talking about how I'm the son of Ronnie Hawkins, right? And my mom says, "Well, I'm his mom. I can assure you that Ronnie Hawkins is not his dad." And the guy says to my mom, "No, Ronnie Hawkins is his dad." And my mom's like, "I can assure you, I'm pretty sure, I was there, and I'm pretty sure that wasn't him." Yeah. So who knows? Maybe I'll meet him. I guess. Is the clock ticking? Is there a timer going on Ronnie? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, I don't think you want to wait too long.
Yeah, because he's got to be in his like late 70s, isn't he? Or
Gee, maybe more. I don't know. Yeah.
than that.
But,
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would still think, it can come in handy occasionally if you, want to sneak in somewhere. You can be Ronnie Hawkins, get a good
Yes.
table somewhere.
Oh, another funny story is that when I was in the Rusty Nails, the drummer in my band was at some kind of a function for the business he was in, and people got drunker and drunker, and then somebody said, "So what are you doing outside of work?" And he said, "Oh, I play in a band." And he's like, "I play with Ron Hawkins." And the guy goes, "Oh, I thought he was dead." And he goes, No, not Ronnie Hawkins." He goes, "Ron Hawkins from Most of the Low." And the guy goes, Yeah, I thought he was dead." And Mark's like, "He probably should be by now, but he's not. He's alive."
Oh, we're all glad for that, sir.